Hey, this is the Sprint 9 video report for Murray Campbell. Um, it's real late, so let's get on with this. It's about 3:30 a.m. right now as I'm recording this. This is the only time I have to do this because tomorrow is very busy. But anyways, let's begin. I am not going to talk too much about documentation stuff because I've just been updating that as I've gone along. Um, this week, apart from that, was about sprites and automating the sprite creation process and stuff like that. So um, I'm going to show, like usual, I'm going to show how this works on the user side and then go into my engine to show what happens under the hood. Um, so if a user wants to have a game object that is a sprite or contains a sprite, um, they handle it like a normal game object, and they usually will hold a sprite, like a pointer to a sprite. And I've made a class called Sprite that basically acts as a container for a graphics object sprite that basically just like makes it easier to interface with in this context. So that is something that I can extend to give the user more parts of the graphics object, but I don't want the user to be able to access the graphics object part of the sprite. It's all like done through the sprite class. Um, so this basically works like this. They have a new sprite. They um, supply an image and then a rect that get yeah. So the image is like the image that's used in the sprite, and then the rect is like its position on the screen, and it's I guess the percentage width and height here. If it's 100, then it's like full sized. Um, so yeah, this is pretty basic. I'm just setting its rotation in the update. Here on in the draw function. Oh, one thing to notice is that on draw registration, the user now has to define a type, like a draw type. I might rename that to draw type, because drawable is kind of weird, but maybe not. I don't know. But there are two draw types. One is model, and one is sprite, and that affects the order in which objects are rendered. That's how I'm doing the rendering order in the drawable manager. And then in the draw function, they call render on the sprite. The sprite has a render function that basically, here I can show you. It basically tells the game object or the graphics object to render to the camera. It's a wrapper. um, and then we get this sprite camera from the Sprite Manager. Um, and the Sprite Manager basically just has, right now all it has really is a sprite camera that is set up in the beginning. Um, it's a singleton manager right now. I was talking with John. I don't know like if making it a scene level manager or something, but the camera manager isn't. So I just decided not to do, or my camera manager isn't a scene level manager. It just like calls the current scene when it needs to, or something like that. I don't know, but it needs to be a singleton because objects need to access it at any time to tell it to render to that using that camera. Okay. And yeah, and everything else is normal game object stuff. So let's dive in here. What time am I at? Jeez. Okay. So I've changed like I said, I changed drawable. You now have to supply a type that, in the drawable manager, I now have two lists. One is a list of models and one is a list of sprites. The only interesting thing here to note is that in process elements, I'm iterating through the model list first and telling all of those objects to draw, and then I'm iterating through the sprite list then after to tell those objects to draw. Then let's see here. Yeah, this goes all the way through the scene and stuff like that. In scene, you can see where it's playing the type. It's getting passed through all of that good stuff. So I have sprite.h, the sprite class. You see here it holds a. I might need to like rethink this. Well, maybe not. I don't know. But these are just those variables are used to just calculate or set up the sprite in the beginning. So it holds this graphics object, and it actually just like it automates getting the sprite model and the sprite render shader like when it's created. So that's there, and then it takes in the image and the rect and handles it all like that. Sets the world. And then we have my set world and render functions, and that's all that needs to be. Let's see what else. We got the Sprite Manager. I mentioned this earlier. It's just the sprite camera. Here we're setting up the orthographic camera. Nothing super crazy here. Let's see. Past that point, it's basically just the image manager, which is another asset manager. The only difference between this and the others is that it gets the texture, or it gets the image from the images folder. By the way, I should probably talk about that. I added another folder to my project in the assets, a new assets folder called images, and this is where I have things that are explicitly going to be used as sprites, and I think that just like makes it clearer for me. So we have that, and then the image manager gets the texture from that path, and then creates an image and puts that into a map. And so that's what we're getting. We're getting the image. It handles creating the texture and assigning it to an image. That way the user doesn't have to. And there's that. So that's all good. Let me just demonstrate this, and then we'll be done. Nothing in the first scene, but when you change the scene, you have sprite rendering. You see the sprite renders on top of the geometry and not behind or anything like that. The draw orders are good. It's good. Alright, that's all. Thanks.